The cold metal floor pressed against Jake Morrison's face as he slowly opened his eyes. His head pounded like someone had hit him with a hammer. The last thing he remembered was the bright flash of enemy weapons tearing through his ship's hull. Now he found himself in a dark cell that smelled of rust and fear. Jake pushed himself up on his hands and looked around. The cell was barely big enough for him to lie down. Metal bars ran from floor to ceiling on one side. Beyond the bars stretched a long corridor filled with similar cells. Each one held a different kind of creature. Some looked almost human, but had strange colored skin or extra arms. Others were so alien that Jake could not tell which end was the head. All of them sat quietly in their cells. Their eyes held the same look Jake had seen in prisoners of war. They had given up hope. A loud clang echoed through the corridor. Heavy footsteps approached. Jake saw 3 guards walking toward his cell. They wore black armor that covered their entire bodies. Their faces were hidden behind dark helmets. Each guard carried a weapon that hummed with energy. The middle guard stopped at Jake's cell and spoke. The voice came out harsh and cold through a speaker in the helmet. "Human, you will listen. You are now property of the Galactic Combat League. You will fight when told to fight. You will kill when told to kill. Refuse, and you will suffer worse than death." Jake stood up slowly. His military training told him to stay calm and gather information. "What happened to my crew?" Jake asked. The guard tilted his head. "Dead. Your ship is space dust. You are here because humans are new. The crowds want to see what you can do against our champions." The guards moved on to the next cell. Jake heard them give the same speech to a creature that looked like a giant lizard. The lizard made no sound in response. Hours passed. Jake tried to piece together what had happened. His colony ship Endeavor had been evacuating civilians from the border world of New Haven. Dominion raiders had attacked without warning. His crew had fought hard, but the enemy ships were too strong and too many. Now he was a prisoner in some kind of fighting arena. Jake had heard stories about such places. The Dominion Empire used them to break the spirit of conquered peoples. They forced prisoners to kill each other for entertainment. It was meant to show that all species were nothing, but savage animals when pushed hard enough. A new sound filled the corridor. It started as a low rumble, but quickly grew louder. The floor began to shake. Other prisoners looked up at the ceiling with expressions of fear and excitement. "Fight time," whispered the lizard creature in the cell next to Jake. "She fights again." The rumbling grew stronger. Now Jake could hear it was not machinery but voices. Thousands of them cheering and screaming. The sound came from somewhere above them. "Who fights?" Jake asked the lizard. "Vera, the Cathara female, arena champion. She has killed 47 opponents." Jake felt his stomach tighten. 47 kills. That meant this Vera had been fighting for months or maybe years. The thought made him angry. No one should be forced to kill that many times just to stay alive. The cheering reached a peak and then suddenly stopped. Jake heard a single voice, speaking through speakers. The words were in Galactic Standard, but the accent was Dominion. "Citizens of the Empire, today our champion faces a new challenger. From the water world of Kepler 7 comes a warrior of the deep-dwelling Aquari people." More cheers erupted. Jake pressed his face against the bars and looked down the corridor. At the far end, he could see a large viewing screen. On it appeared an image of a massive arena filled with thousands of creatures. Most looked like the guards. Their black armor gleamed under bright lights. In the center of the arena stood a circular fighting pit. The walls were high and smooth. No way to climb out. 2 gates opened on opposite sides of the pit. From the left gate emerged a creature Jake had never seen before. It moved on 4 legs but had 2 arms ending in claws. Water dripped from its blue-green skin. The crowd booed and threw objects at it. From the right gate came the champion. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Vera stood 8 feet tall on 2 powerful legs. Her body was covered in natural armor that looked like black metal plates. Long. Claws extended from her fingers. Her head was shaped like a predator's with sharp teeth, visible even from this distance. But it was her eyes that caught Jake's attention. Even through the viewing screen, he could see they held no joy in fighting. They were tired, sad, like she was carrying a weight too heavy to bear. The announcer's voice boomed again. "Let the combat begin," a horn sounded. The Aquari creature charged, forward with surprising speed. Water shot from its mouth in a powerful stream. Vera dodged to the side and moved in a wide circle around her opponent. Jake watched carefully. His military background helped him analyze fighting styles. The Aquari was strong but clumsy on land. It relied too much on its water attacks. Vera was patient. She waited for the right moment. When the moment came, Vera moved faster than Jake thought possible. She closed the distance in 2 quick steps. Her claws flashed once. The Aquari fell to the ground and did not get up. The crowd exploded in cheers. They chanted Vera's name over and over. She stood over her fallen opponent and raised her arms in victory. But Jake noticed something others might have missed. Her shoulders shook slightly. She was crying. The viewing screen went dark. The cheering faded. Silence returned to the prison corridor. 48 now, said the lizard creature quietly. Jake sat back in his cell and thought about what he had seen. This Vera was not just a mindless killer. There was something more going on here, something that kept her fighting, even though it clearly caused her pain. He looked around at the other prisoners. Most had returned to staring at nothing. They had accepted their fate. But Jake had not survived years of military service by giving up when things looked bad. If he was going to die in this place, he would at least try to understand it first. And maybe, if he was very lucky and very smart, he might find a way to help others survive, too. The guards returned hours later with food. It was a gray paste that tasted like nothing. Jake ate it anyway. He would need his strength for whatever came next. As he lay down to sleep on the cold metal floor, Jake made himself a promise. He would find out why Vera kept fighting. He would learn everything he could about this arena and its masters. And somehow, he would find a way to break the chains that held them all. Jake woke to the sound of metal doors sliding open. Guards moved through the corridor, calling out numbers. Each prisoner had a number painted on their cell door. Jake looked at his own door and saw the number 47 in bright red paint. 47, called a guard. "Come forward." Jake stood and walked to his cell door. The guard pressed something on his armor and the bars disappeared into the floor. Jake had seen energy barriers before, but this one moved faster than any he knew. "Follow," the guard said. They walked through several corridors. Jake tried to remember each turn in case he needed to find his way back. The walls were covered with screens showing images from past arena fights. Blood and death filled every screen. The guards seemed to enjoy watching them. They entered a large room filled with metal benches. About 30 other prisoners sat on the benches. Jake recognized some from the cells near his own. The lizard creature nodded at him from across the room. A Dominion officer entered. Unlike the guards, this one wore no helmet. His face looked human, except for the gray skin and yellow eyes. He carried a data pad and spoke in a bored voice. "New prisoners will attend orientation. You will learn the rules. You will learn what happens when you break the rules." The officer touched his data pad, and the room's walls lit up with images. Rule 1. You fight when scheduled, no exceptions. The image showed a prisoner refusing to enter the arena. Guards dragged him away screaming. Rule 2. You kill your opponent or you face punishment. Jake watched in horror as the next image showed the same prisoner strapped to a machine. Electricity coursed through his body while he screamed. Rule 3. 10 victories earn freedom. This is the promise of the Galactic Combat League. The officers Yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter when he said this. Jake noticed several prisoners look at each other with doubt. Rule 4. Cooperation between prisoners is forbidden. Anyone caught helping another prisoner will be executed immediately. The final image showed 3 prisoners sharing food. All 3 lay dead on the floor with burn marks on their chests. Jake raised his hand. The officer looked annoyed but nodded. "What happens after 10 victories?" Jake asked. The officer smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Freedom. Release to your home world. Return to your family. The Galactic Combat League always keeps its promises." Jake heard the lizard creature make a quiet sound. It sounded like bitter laughter. The officer heard it too, and walked over to the lizard. "You have something to say, number 31. The lizard looked up with tired eyes. "Nothing, sir. Just clearing my throat." The officer stared at him for a long moment, then returned to the front of the room. "Questions are finished. Guards will return you to your cells. First fights begin tomorrow." As they walked back, Jake found himself next to the lizard creature. The guards were far enough ahead that they could whisper without being heard. "The promises are lies," the lizard said quietly. "I have been here 3 years. I have seen fighters win 10 matches. "What happened to them?" Jake whispered back. "They disappear. New fighters are told they went home." "But I have good hearing. I hear the guards talking. Those fighters are moved to special cells. They become training partners for new champions. They fight until they die." Jake felt cold anger building in his chest. The Dominion were even more cruel than he had thought. "How many has Vera won?" Jake asked. 48 now. She could have claimed freedom long ago, but she stays. The guards laugh about it. They say she is too stupid to count to 10. They reached the cell block and were separated. Jake spent the rest of the day thinking about what he had learned. The arena was designed to break hope, make prisoners kill each other for a freedom that would never come. But why did Vera keep fighting? If she knew the promises were lies, why not refuse? Why not let them kill her and end the pain? That evening, Jake got his answer. The guards brought food as usual. Jake noticed they spent more time at some cells than others. They seemed to be having longer conversations with certain prisoners. When they reached Jake's cell, one guard stopped and looked at him. "Human, you are scheduled to fight in 3 days. Your opponent will be announced tomorrow." The guard moved. On. Jake listened as they continued down the corridor. Most prisoners got the same quick message, but when they reached the end of the corridor, Jake heard something different. "Vera, your fight is postponed. New instructions from the administrators. Your brother sends his greetings." Jake's blood went cold. Brother. They were using her family against her. He pressed against his cell bars and looked toward the end of the corridor. The cell there was larger than the others and had a small window. Through the bars, Jake could see a massive shape moving inside. "Did you hear that?" the lizard whispered from the next cell. "Yes. They have her brother. Not just her brother. They have many family members of long-term fighters. It is how they maintain control. Fight and kill, or watch your family die." Jake understood now. The arena was not just about entertainment. It was about psychological torture. Break the strongest warriors by forcing them to choose between their own death and the death of loved ones. Over the next 2 days, Jake watched and learned. During exercise periods, he observed which prisoners moved with military training. During meals, he noticed who still had the spark of defiance in their eyes. During the long nights, he listened to whispered conversations between cells. The lizard creature was named Gary. He had been a police officer on his home world before capture. The insect-like being in cell 43 was Linda, a former engineer. A creature that looked like a walking tree was named Robert. He had been a teacher. All of them had families. All of them had been told their relatives would die if they refused to fight. The Dominion had turned survival instinct against itself. On the second night, Jake heard new sounds from Vera's cell. Quiet sobbing that went on for hours. The sound of someone who had endured more pain than any being should have to bear. Jake made a decision. The rules said cooperation was forbidden, but the rules were made by monsters who tortured families to force compliance. Jake had never been good at following rules made by monsters. The next morning brought his fight assignment. Jake would face a warrior from the Ice World Tundra Prime. The guards seemed excited about this matchup. They talked about how the crowd loved to see different fighting styles clash. Jake barely listened. His mind was focused on a different kind of fight. Not the one in the arena, but the one for the souls of everyone trapped in this place. He began to plan. Carefully and quietly, he would build connections with other prisoners. He would find out more about the arena's systems and weaknesses. He would discover where they kept the family members. And somehow, he would find a way to talk to Vera, the 8-foot-tall predator who cried alone in her cell every night. The champion who could have been free long ago but stayed to protect someone she loved. Jake had a feeling that if he could reach her, if he could show her a different path, everything might change. The question was whether he would live long enough to try. The day of Jake's first fight arrived with the sound of sirens echoing through the prison block. Guards moved faster than usual. Their boots rang against the metal floors as they prepared for the day's entertainment. Jake sat in his cell, trying to stay calm. His opponent was a tundra warrior named Frost. The guards had told him Frost stood 7 feet tall and had natural ice armor covering his body. His people were known for their strength and endurance in cold environments. Human 47. Called a guard. Time to prove what your species can do. The cell bars disappeared into the floor. Jake stepped forward and followed the guard through corridors he had not seen before. These walls were painted bright colors. Screens showed cheering crowds and highlights from famous fights. Everything was designed to build excitement for the coming violence. They reached a preparation room. The guard handed Jake a simple gray uniform and basic boots. Put these on. No weapons allowed except natural ones. Fight begins in 10 minutes. Jake changed clothes quickly. The uniform fit well enough. The boots had good grip on the bottom. He tried to remember everything he knew about fighting larger opponents. Speed and intelligence would have to beat raw strength. A new guard entered the room. This one carried a tablet computer. Human Jake Morrison. Age 32. Military background. Colony ship captain. The crowd is very interested to see what humans can do in combat. The guard looked up from his tablet. Any last words for your home world? Jake met his eyes steadily. Tell them we don't give up easy. The guard smiled and made notes on his tablet. Good. The crowd's like fighters with spirit. Makes the defeat more entertaining. They led Jake through a tunnel that sloped upward. The sound of thousands of voices grew louder with each step. Jake could feel his heart beating faster. Not from fear, but from anger. These people were cheering for his death like it was a game. The tunnel ended at a metal gate. Through the bars, Jake could see the arena floor. It looked much larger from down here than it had on the viewing screens. The walls rose 30 feet, straight up. No way to climb out even if someone wanted to try. The crowd noise was deafening. Jake saw the stands packed with Dominion citizens. Many wore expensive clothes and jewelry. They held drinks and food while they waited for blood to be spilled. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Citizens of the Empire, today we present a special match. For the first time in our arena, we have a representative of the species called human. The crowd made various sounds. Some cheered, others booed. Many seemed curious to see something new. Humans claim to be intelligent problem solvers. Today, we test this claim against the proven strength of a tundra ice warrior. The opposite gate opened first. Frost emerged and the crowd cheered loudly. Jake had to admit the warrior looked impressive. Blue-white skin covered powerful muscles. Ice crystals grew from his shoulders and arms like natural armor. His breath created visible clouds in the warm arena air. Frost raised his arms and roared. The sound echoed off the arena walls. Ice shot from his hands and created sharp spikes on the arena floor. The crowd loved this display and cheered even louder. Then Jake's gate opened. He walked onto the arena floor and heard the crowd grow quiet. He looked smaller and weaker than most fighters they were used to seeing. Some spectators laughed and pointed at him. Jake ignored them and focused on his opponent. Frost was already moving forward with confidence. The Ice Warrior expected this to be an easy victory. The starting horn sounded. Frost charged straight at Jake with surprising speed. Ice formed around his fists as he swung at Jake's head. Jake ducked and rolled to the side. The ice fist hit the arena wall hard enough to crack the stone. Jake kept moving. He circled around the larger fighter and watched for patterns. Frost was strong and could create ice weapons from nothing, but he moved like someone who usually won fights quickly. He was not used to opponents who avoided his attacks. The crowd grew restless as Jake continued to dodge and run. They wanted to see violence, not a chase scene. Some began to boo and throw objects into the arena. Frost grew angry at his inability to land a hit. He stopped chasing Jake and began creating ice spears. He threw them one after another, trying to pin Jake against the wall. Jake saw his chance. As Frost raised his arm to throw another spear, Jake charged forward. He slid between the warrior's legs and grabbed a handful of sand from the arena floor. As he came up behind Frost, he threw the sand at the back of the warrior's knees. Frost slipped on the loose sand and fell forward. His own ice spear came down and pierced his shoulder. Blue blood ran onto the arena floor. Jake did not wait. He jumped onto Frost's back and wrapped his arms around the warrior's thick neck. Frost tried to reach back and grab him, but the ice armor made it hard to bend his arms. The warrior rolled over, trying to crush Jake beneath his weight. Jake held on and squeezed tighter. Frost's struggles became weaker. Finally, the big warrior went limp. Jake released his hold and stepped back. Frost was unconscious but still breathing. The crowd fell silent. They had expected the human to die quickly. The announcer's voice returned. The human has defeated his opponent. By arena rules, he must now deliver the killing blow. Jake looked down at the unconscious Frost. The warrior had fought bravely. He did not deserve to die for the entertainment of these monsters. Jake looked up at the crowd and shook his head. No. The word carried clearly in the silent arena. Shocked whispers ran through the stands. No fighter had ever refused to kill a defeated opponent. Security systems activated. Energy weapons emerged from hidden slots in the arena walls. Red targeting beams focused on Jake's chest. But before the weapons could fire, something unexpected happened. The arena's power flickered and went out. Emergency lighting came on, but the weapon systems stayed dark. In the confusion, Jake helped Frost to his feet. The Ice Warrior looked at him with surprise and gratitude. Guards flooded into the arena. They surrounded both fighters and led them away. The crowd erupted in angry shouts. They had been cheated of their blood. Back in his cell, Jake thought about what had happened. The power failure had saved his life, but it was too convenient to be an accident. Someone in the arena had helped him. Later that night, he heard guards talking in the corridor. The human stunt has given other fighters ideas. 2 more refused to kill today. The administrators are worried about a rebellion. What about the power failure? Asked another guard. Still investigating. Someone with high-level access caused it. Could be sabotage. Jake listened carefully. He was not the only one who wanted to change things. Others were working against the system. The next day brought disturbing news. Vera was scheduled to fight again, but this time the match was different. Her opponent was another Kythera, a young one barely old enough to be a warrior. Jake pressed against his cell bars and watched the preparation screens. The young Kythera looked terrified. He called out in his native language as guards pushed him toward the arena tunnel. Jake understood enough words to know the young one was calling for his family. calling for someone to help him. From the end of the corridor came a sound Jake had never heard before. Vera was growling. Not the controlled growl of an arena fighter, but the deep rage of a predator pushed too far. The sound made every prisoner in the block go quiet. Even the guards looked nervous. Jake realized the administrators had made a mistake. They thought they could force Vera to kill one of her own people for their entertainment. But they had pushed the wrong warrior too far. The breaking point was coming. Jake could feel it in the air like electricity before a storm. And when it came, he planned to be ready. The arena filled with excited voices as the crowd waited for Vera's fight. This was not just any match. The administrators had promised something special. 2 warriors from the same world fighting to the death. Jake pressed his face against the viewing screen in the corridor. Other prisoners gathered around similar screens throughout the prison block. Everyone understood this fight was different. The Dominion was testing how far they could push their champion. Vera emerged from the fighter tunnel first. She moved differently than Jake had seen before. Her usual controlled walk was replaced by short, angry steps. Her claws scraped against the arena floor with each movement. The sound carried clearly through the speakers. The crowd cheered when they saw her, but Vera did not raise her arms in response. She stood in the center of the arena and stared at the opposite tunnel, waiting. The announcer's voice boomed across the arena. Citizens of the Empire, today our champion faces a special challenge. Her opponent is Tom, a young warrior from her own world of Kithara Prime. Jake felt his blood go cold. Tom. The guards had mentioned Vera's brother before. This young fighter was not just any member of her species, he was family. Tom emerged from the tunnel looking terrified. He was smaller than Vera and much younger. His armor plating had not fully developed yet. He moved like someone who had never been in real combat before. When Tom saw Vera, his expression changed from fear to hope. He called out to her in their native language. Jake could not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. Tom was asking his sister to help him. Vera took a step toward Tom, then stopped. Her whole body shook with the effort of controlling herself. Jake realized she was caught between 2 impossible choices. Kill her brother to keep him from suffering worse torture, or refuse to fight and watch the administrators punish them both. The starting horn sounded. Neither fighter moved. Vera stood, frozen in place while Tom backed against the arena wall. The crowd grew quiet as seconds passed without violence. The announcer's voice returned with irritation. Champions must engage in combat or face automatic penalties. Warning lights began, flashing around the arena. Hidden weapon systems emerged from the walls. Jake had seen these before during his own fight. If the fighters did not start killing each other soon, the weapons would do it for them. Vera looked up at the weapon systems, then back at her brother. Her growling grew louder. The sound filled the arena and made many spectators shift nervously in their seats. That was when Jake made his decision. During his fight, Jake had noticed something about the arena's control systems. The power failure that saved his life had come from somewhere inside the facility. Someone with access to the main computers was helping fighters when they could. Jake had spent years working with computer systems on colony ships. He understood how most Dominion technology worked. If he could reach the right control panel, he might be able to help Vera and Tom. The problem was getting out of his cell. Jake looked around the viewing area. Most guards were watching the arena screens. Only 2 remained in the corridor, and they seemed distracted by the unusual fight. Jake remembered something Gary the Lizard had told him. The cell barriers were controlled by individual switches on each guard's armor. If he could get close enough to a guard, he might be able to trigger his own cell release. Jake began coughing loudly. He clutched his chest and fell to the floor of his cell. He made choking sounds and gasped for air. One of the guards heard him and walked over. "What is wrong with you, human?" Jake continued gasping and pointed at his throat. "Can't breathe! Something wrong! Need help!" The guard looked annoyed but pressed a button on his armor. The cell barrier disappeared. "Stand up! Stop making noise!" Jake stood slowly, then suddenly lunged forward. He grabbed the guard's weapon and pressed the emergency release on his armor. The guard's helmet system shut down, and he collapsed unconscious. The second guard turned at the sound of struggle, but Jake was already moving. He stunned the second guard with the energy weapon before the alarm could be raised. Jake ran toward the arena control center. He had memorized the route during his walks to orientation. Emergency stairs led up to the main observation deck where the fight coordinators watched each match. In the arena below, Vera was still refusing to fight her brother. The automatic weapons were charging up for their first shots. In seconds, both Cathara would be dead. Jake reached the control center and found it mostly empty. Everyone was watching the arena floor through the large windows. Jake slipped inside and found the main computer terminal. His fingers flew across the controls. Colony ship computers used similar interfaces to Dominion systems. Jake found the weapon control program and began entering new commands. Just as the arena weapons fired, Jake triggered a complete system shutdown. The energy beams went wide and struck the arena walls instead of the fighters. Emergency lighting came on, but all automated systems went dark. In the confusion that followed, Jake did something else. He activated the arena's internal communication system and sent a message to every screen in the facility. "All fighters, this is Jake Morrison, the human in cell 47. The system can be beaten. We don't have to kill each other for their entertainment. Fight back." Alarms began sounding throughout the facility. Guards rushed toward the control center, but Jake was already gone. He had slipped back into the arena level through a maintenance tunnel. When Jake reached the prison block, he found chaos. Several fighters had broken out of their cells during the power failure. Guards were trying to restore order, but more prisoners joined the uprising with each passing minute. Gary the Lizard grabbed Jake's arm as he ran past. "The communication system is still active. Vera is using it to talk to fighters throughout the facility. She's organizing something." Jake felt hope surge through him. If Vera was taking charge of the resistance, they might actually have a chance. On the viewing screens, Jake could see Vera and Tom had reached the arena tunnel safely. Security forces were trying to contain them, but the siblings fought together with deadly efficiency. More screens showed uprisings in other parts of the facility. Fighters were working together instead of against each other. The Dominion's control was breaking down. But Jake knew this was just the beginning. The real fight was about to start. He found a working communication terminal and sent a message to every screen in the arena complex. "All prisoners, all fighters. They kept us apart because together we are stronger than they are. Tonight, we prove it." The revolution had begun. The uprising spread through the arena complex like fire through dry grass. Jake moved through corridors filled with freed prisoners and panicked guards. The Dominion forces were trying to restore order, but they had never planned for this many fighters working together. Jake found Vera and Tom in the main equipment storage area. They were gathering weapons and supplies while other fighters stood guard at the entrances. When Vera saw Jake, she stopped what she was doing and walked over to him. Up close, she was even more impressive than on the viewing screens. Her natural armor gleamed under the emergency lights. Her claws were stained with the blood of guards who had tried to stop her escape, but it was her eyes that caught Jake's attention. The sadness he had seen before was still there, but now it mixed with something else. Hope. "You are the human who started this," Vera said. Her voice was deep and rough, but she spoke Galactic Standard well. "I just turned off some lights. You did the rest." Vera looked at her brother, Tom, then back at Jake. "They told me humans were weak, soft creatures who avoid real fighting." "They told us a lot of lies," Jake replied. Gary the Lizard approached, them carrying an armload of energy weapons. "Jake, we have a problem. The main security center is still under Dominion control. They're calling for reinforcements from the fleet." Jake felt his stomach drop. If Dominion warships arrived, the uprising would be crushed. They needed to take control of the entire facility before help could arrive. "How long do we have?" Jake asked. "Maybe 2 hours." The nearest fleet patrol was 3 systems away when this started. Vera growled low in her throat. "Then we move fast. Take the security center. Control the whole station." She turned to address all the fighters in the storage area. "Listen well. The humans have shown us something important. We are stronger when we work together than when we fight alone." Murmurs of agreement came from the crowd. Jake saw fighters from a dozen different worlds nodding their heads. "The Dominion kept us separate because they feared what we could do united. Tonight we show them their fears were correct." Vera raised her clawed hand and pointed toward the ceiling. "The security center is 5 levels up. They have heavy weapons and trained soldiers. Many of us will die trying to take it." She paused and looked around the room. "But if we fail tonight, we all die anyway. Slowly. One by one in their arena. I have killed 48 opponents for their entertainment. I will not kill a 49th. The crowd of fighters roared their approval. Jake felt the energy in the room change. These beings had been broken down and made to feel helpless. Now they were remembering what it felt like to have power. Tom and "I will lead the assault on the security center," Vera continued. "Jake will coordinate the technical attacks on their computer systems. Gary will organize the assault teams." Jake stepped forward. "What about the families they're holding hostage?" Vera's expression darkened. "Linda, the engineer, found the holding area. It's in the lower levels near the ship docking bays. Robert is leading a rescue team there now." Jake nodded. The Dominion's main weapon against them was being neutralized. Without the threat to their families, the fighters could focus entirely on escape. They moved out in organized groups. Jake stayed with Vera and Tom as they fought their way up through the facility levels. The Dominion guards were well trained, but they were not prepared for enemies who coordinated their attacks. Jake's job was to disable security systems as they advanced. His knowledge of Dominion computer networks proved invaluable. He opened locked doors, shut down automated defenses, and rerouted guard communications. By the time they reached the security center level, Jake realized how much things had changed. Hours ago, these fighters had been isolated prisoners waiting to die. Now they moved like a real army with clear objectives and tactical coordination. The security center was heavily defended. Dominion officers had barricaded themselves inside and were firing through narrow windows at anyone who approached. Energy beams filled the corridor, making direct assault impossible. "We need a way past their defenses," Gary said. "The door is too strong to break down." Jake studied the corridor layout. There had to be another approach. Then he noticed something on the wall diagrams. Maintenance shafts ran behind the security center. "I can get inside through the ventilation system," Jake said. "Open the door from within." Vera shook her head. "Too dangerous. If they catch you inside, you will be trapped." "Someone has to try. We're running out of time." Before anyone could stop him, Jake was moving. He found a maintenance panel and pulled it open. The ventilation shaft was barely large enough for him to crawl through, but it would work. Jake pulled himself into the shaft and began moving toward the security center. He could hear gunfire and shouting from the corridor behind him. The sound grew fainter as he crawled deeper into the facility's mechanical systems. The shaft opened into a small room filled with computer equipment. Jake could see the main security center through a glass window. Dozens of Dominion officers worked frantically at control stations trying to coordinate their defense. Jake found the door controls and prepared to override them. But as his fingers touched the keyboard, something went wrong. An alarm sounded in the room and red lights began flashing. "Intruder detected in server room," announced a computer voice. "Security teams respond immediately." Jake heard footsteps running toward his location. In seconds, Dominion soldiers would break down the door and capture him. He had to act fast. Jake's fingers flew across the keyboard. He opened every door in the security center at once. Emergency barriers that protected the Dominion officers suddenly disappeared. The sound of battle erupted from the main security room as Vera and her fighters poured inside, but Jake could not see what was happening. The door to his room burst open and Dominion soldiers rushed in. "Surrender, human!" shouted their leader. "You are surrounded." Jake looked around the room. Computer equipment filled every wall. If he was going to die here, he could at least make sure the Dominion paid a price. Jake grabbed a power cable and jammed it into the main server housing. Sparks flew as electrical systems overloaded. Computer screens went dark throughout the room. The Dominion soldiers fired their weapons, but Jake was already moving. He rolled behind a bank of servers as energy beams filled the air around him. That was when he heard it, a sound that made his heart leap with hope. Vera's roar echoed through the facility. Not the controlled growl of an arena fighter, but the full battle cry of a Cathara warrior leading her people to victory. The sound was followed by the clash of weapons and the shouts of fighting. Jake realized Vera had taken the main security center. The uprising was succeeding. The Dominion soldiers in Jake's room heard the sounds, too. Their leader spoke into his communicator. "Command Center, this is Squad 7. Request immediate backup. The facility is lost. Repeat, the facility is lost." Only static answered him. Jake smiled. The communication systems he had just destroyed were their only link to the outside. Minutes later, the door opened again. This time it was Vera who entered. Her armor was scorched from energy weapons, but she moved without injury. "Jake, are you hurt?" "I'm fine. What's our status?" "The security center is ours. All major systems are under our control. Robert's team freed the hostages. We have won." Jake felt relief wash over him. They had actually done it. Prisoners from dozens of worlds had united and defeated their captors. But as they walked back to the main security center, Jake realized this was not really an ending. It was a beginning. The Dominion would send more ships. Other arena facilities would hear about the uprising and increase their security. The real fight for freedom was just starting, but for the first time since his capture, Jake felt hope. They had proven something important here. When people worked together instead of against each other, they could overcome any enemy, and that was a lesson the galaxy needed to learn. The security center buzzed with activity as freed prisoners worked to secure their victory. Jake stood before the main communication console watching status reports flow in from throughout the facility. Every major system was now under their control. Vera approached carrying a data tablet. Her brother Tom walked beside her looking much more confident than he had in the arena. "The ship bays are secure," Vera reported. "We have captured 6 Dominion transport vessels and 2 armed escorts. Enough to evacuate everyone." Jake nodded, but his attention was focused on the long-range sensors. "Any sign of the fleet reinforcements?" "Still 40 minutes out," Gary answered from another console. "But Jake, you need to see this." Gary transferred his display to the main screen. It showed communication signals coming from dozens of locations across the sector. "What am I looking at?" Jake asked. "Other arena facilities. Word of our uprising is spreading. 3 stations have reported prisoner. Revolts in the last hour." Jake felt his heart race. How is that possible? Linda, the engineer, looked up from her workstation. "Before we took the security center, I managed to send our tactical data to every known arena facility. Instructions on how to disable their security systems." Vera's eyes glowed with fierce satisfaction. "The Dominion built their power on keeping us separated. Now their enemies share information across the galaxy." Tom stepped forward, holding another data tablet. "Sister, the rescued families want to speak with you." Vera took the tablet, and Jake could see her expression soften. On the screen were dozens of faces from different worlds. All the family members who had been held hostage to force fighters to kill for entertainment. An elderly Cathara male spoke first. "Vera, my daughter, you have freed us all. Your courage has broken the chains that held us." Other voices joined in. Families from a dozen worlds expressing gratitude and pledging support for whatever came next. Vera handed the tablet back to Tom. Jake could see tears in her eyes, but her voice remained steady. "Jake, we need to discuss what happens next. The Dominion fleet will be here soon. Even with the ships we captured, we cannot defeat them in direct combat." Jake had been thinking about the same problem. "We don't fight them. We escape and take our story to the rest of the galaxy." "Run away?" Tom asked. "Hide from the Dominion?" "No," Jake replied. "We go to every world that has people imprisoned in these facilities. We share what we learned here, show them how to organize their own uprisings." Gary looked up from his console. "That could work. The Dominion has arena facilities in 17 sectors. If even half of them revolt, it would cripple their entertainment industry." Vera nodded slowly. "Turn their own system against them. Use their communication networks to spread rebellion instead of fear." Linda finished her work at the engineering station and joined their group. "I've downloaded all the facility technical data. Security codes, system layouts, guard schedules, everything. Future rebels will need." Jake felt excitement building. What had started as a desperate escape was becoming something much larger. "We need to move fast," he said. "Divide our ships and people into multiple groups. Hit different facilities simultaneously. The Dominion won't be able to respond to that many uprisings at once." Vera considered this. "My people know the locations of several arena facilities. We can provide guides and tactical information. The Aquari worlds have ships that could help with evacuations," added another freed fighter. Gary pulled up a star chart on the main screen. "If we coordinate properly, we could free thousands of prisoners within a few weeks." Jake studied the chart. Red markers showed known arena locations. There were more than he had expected. The Dominion's entertainment industry was larger and more cruel than anyone realized. But now they had a way to fight back. An alarm sounded from the sensor station. "Dominion fleet dropping out of hyperspace," reported Tom. 8 ships, including 2 heavy cruisers. Jake looked around the security center. "Time to go. Everyone to the ship bays." As they ran through the corridors, Jake felt a mix of emotions. Fear for what was coming, excitement about the possibilities ahead, and something else he had not felt in a long time: pride in what they had accomplished. They reached the ship bays as the first Dominion attack ships entered weapons range. Jake could see energy beams striking the station's outer hull through the large viewport windows. "All ships launch immediately," Vera commanded over the communication system. "Execute Escape Plan Gamma." The captured Dominion vessels lifted off in different directions. Jake found himself aboard a transport ship with Vera, Tom, and 30 other freed fighters. Through the ship's windows, he could see the arena station growing smaller behind them. "Will we ever go home?" Tom asked his sister. Vera was quiet for a moment. Then she looked at Jake and the other fighters around them. "This is our home now," she said. "All of us together, fighting to free others like we were freed." Jake understood what she meant. They could not go back to their old lives. The Dominion would never stop hunting them, but they could build something new, a coalition of freed prisoners working to tear down the system that had enslaved them. As their ship jumped to hyperspace, Jake activated the communication system. Messages were already coming in from other vessels in their small fleet. Transport. 2 reporting successful escape. 43 survivors aboard. Escort ship Alpha here. We have the technical data secured. Ready to begin distribution. Medical ship 1. All rescued family members are safe and healthy. Jake leaned back in his chair and allowed himself to smile. They had done more than escape. They had proven that cooperation could defeat the Dominion's divide and conquer tactics. Over the following weeks, their small fleet grew larger. Ships arrived from other successful arena uprisings. Fighters who had been enemies in the pits became allies in the resistance. Jake often found himself working late in the communication center, coordinating with rebel groups across the galaxy. The work was difficult and dangerous, but it felt right. In a way his old life never had. One night, Vera joined him at his workstation. The massive Cathera looked tired but content. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Giving up your chance at a quiet life to fight this war?" Jake thought about his old job as a colony ship captain. Safe routes between established worlds. Routine. Cargo runs. A predictable future. "No," he said. "What we're doing here matters more than safety." Vera nodded. "My brother asked me something similar yesterday. He wanted to know why I stayed in the arena so long. Why I didn't refuse to fight and die with honor. What did you tell him?" "That dying with honor is easy. Living with purpose is harder." Jake understood. They could have died as martyrs in the arena and been quickly forgotten. Instead, they had chosen the difficult path of trying to change the galaxy. The communication console chimed with an incoming message. Jake opened the transmission and saw a familiar face on the screen. It was Gary the Lizard, calling from one of their other ships. "Jake, Vera, you need to hear this. We just received word from the Centauri sector. The main Dominion arena facility there has fallen. Over 200 prisoners freed. The rebellion is spreading faster than we hoped." Jake felt a surge of satisfaction. Each successful uprising weakened the Dominion's hold on conquered peoples. Each freed prisoner became a new ally in their growing resistance. As he closed the communication, Jake realized something important. The voice that had stopped Vera's rage in the arena had been his own. But the voice that was now inspiring rebellion across the galaxy belonged to all of them. They had learned to speak with one voice, the voice of beings who refused to accept oppression, who chose cooperation over competition, who believed that freedom was worth any sacrifice. And that voice was growing louder every day.